Welcome to week 1 of the Elestriad, where Drewby, representing ALS and the Wind Pantheon, is throwing down against Magnitude, representing Poseidon and the Water Pantheon. These two epic casters are ready for their first clash, and if you missed their deck profiles and their pack openings, definitely check them out in the description below. As always, leave a comment down below who you think's gonna win this epic clash, and don't forget to head over to shop.elestrals.com to pick up a starter deck and test your stellar luck. Without further ado, let's dive into the clash. Alrighty, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. It seems as though Drewby has won the dice roll and will begin this clash here as Wind takes on Water in a showdown. This will be really fun. Drewby's gonna kick things off with a Hydrake, and of course, Steve, with very little removal, is gonna have a difficult time dealing with that Hydrake and preventing it from becoming a Pen Terror. Steve's deck is gonna rely a lot more on defensive opportunities, utilizing things like Oystress and Mistation, and then of course Galaxy to switch the attack and defense stats of those Water Elestrals. But seems as though Steve is gonna get things going with Atlantis, giving himself a buff to all of his Water Elestrals on the field. And we know Drewby is packing a few Water Elestrals, and this is gonna be interesting to watch because I noticed in the team builders, the deck profiles, that Drewby was running some Tsunamis, running some Crackheads, running some Veritakwas. Steve is going to be able to run through those things with his Water Elestrals, and he's going to get this roll in with a Foamy in defense position, and that's about as good as it gets if you're Steve, right? He's got 2 back row, he's got the Foamy down, he's got the Atlantis to buff his stats, and now he's in a position where Drewby's going to have to try to get rid of that Foamy, or he's going to have to attack into it and kind of fall right into the trap that Steve is looking to set here and be able to get out some of those other Water Elestrals, like something like an Aphros, which can draw, or something like another Foamy or Mistation or Galaxy, as I said, kind of setting up some of those combo pieces as they move forward here. Looks like Drewby is going to draw for their turn and try to figure out exactly what he wants to do here. I know he was super excited to dive in and represent ALS here in this clash, being able to search out those toolbox pieces with his Divine Rune, but he's got a P-Gust here, and P-Gust, one of the kind of staples in Wind right now. Every time it receives a Wind Spirit, it can target and destroy a rune on the field, and he's gonna go right after the Atlantis. So not having the Island of Aeolia to kind of counter the stadium play here, he goes directly after that, and he's gonna remove it from the field, kind of removing that buff that Steve was kind of looking to take advantage of. And it seems as though the Hydrake is going to attack into the Foamy, and Steve's gonna let it happen. He's not gonna utilize his back row here. Makes a lot of sense, and he's gonna be able to search out anything in his deck. And this is where things could get really interesting, right? If Steve does have that Veritakwa, he has an opportunity to potentially, change position on that, Hydrake and maybe get rid of its effect. But he is indeed going to go for Aphros, the Nexus Celestial in Water. Aphros has a unique effect where when it nexuses around the board, those Water Spirits, you're able to draw a card for every one of those spirits that it does indeed nexus. So this can become quite problematic very quickly, especially when Drewby doesn't have an attacker that can get over Aphros for defense right now. So Steve's gonna get his turn going. He's gonna draw a card here, and he has an opportunity to potentially set up some Nexus if he can get another Elestral into the field. In an ideal world, he has a Poseidon to pair with that Aphros, because that's where the real bolt comes in. That's where the real draw power comes in. We're gonna see a Sluggle hit the field into defense. That's going to allow him to regenerate 3 Water Spirits, but I don't think he quite has 3 to grab, so he's gonna grab up to, I think it was 1 or 2. That's gonna get him up to 18 spirits, and it's gonna give him a little bit more defensive presence on the field, but not really a whole lot going on there in terms of being able to move the board state forward. If you're Steve, you might be setting up for a big Majesty play here, or trying to get out some of your stronger Elestrals, and Drewby's just gonna fire back and continue to flood his board with an Arrowmare. Arrowmare with 4 attack and 5 defense actually has the highest stats of attack and defense combined in all 1-cost Elestrals. So a lot of times people will bring Arrowmare and just misenchant it because its effect oftentimes isn't super relevant. But nonetheless, it seems as though Steve's defensive presence is able to hold him down here, but Sluggle does go down from an attack, and Steve is now forced to try to get some momentum on the field. His Aphros' 4 defense is holding it down, but it seems as though Drewby is just a simple Sorlet away from making that very difficult for him. Steve's gonna go out and cast a Warmite. Warmite has the effect where you can actually target an Elestral on the field and drop their attack for that turn and be able to essentially knock something out. Drewby does indeed have the opportunity to use his Tsunami here. I actually said in the beginning of this match that Tsunami was going to end up being kind of a liability for Drewby. Going up against a water deck, it's very interesting to say, you know what, I'm going to bring this card that is completely invalidated by water, but he does it nonetheless, and it actually works out in his favor as he's able to kind of slow down that Warmite attack and essentially force it into defense position, giving him an opportunity to kind of gain back the momentum that he would have lost there. That's a pretty big swing, right? Because if Steve's able to remove either the P-Gust or the Aeromare or even the Hydrake there, you're forcing a lot of spirits to be used. I think if you're Steve at this point in the game, you are trying to actually tap into fire right now. Those eruptions that he's packing in his deck could prove to be incredibly useful, as Drewby's going to switch all of his Elestrals into attack position here, and then he's going to cast a Veritaqua, and that's huge. If the Veritaqua is able to attack the Aphros, it doesn't care about the Aphros' defense stat, but rather it's going to just remove it from the field before it even makes that calculation. Veritaqua is the quintessential counter to water, and it's going to be something that Steve's going to have to deal with throughout the Elestriad. Water is a very cool element in this game, and you have the opportunity to get a lot of spirits on the board quickly and take advantage of that. But, you know, one of the best advantages water has is Tsunami, and when it's countered by Veritaqua so well, it can be very difficult for casters to kind of, you know, take advantage of water at this early game state here. Steve does have some counter runes. Looks like he's not going to be able to utilize those in this situation, and rather it seems as though he's going to be taking some spirits damage here, potentially from this Hydrake, and it looks like he is indeed going to expend the spirit for that, and then it looks like Aeromare is going to hit directly as well. So Drewby here sitting with a full board of 4 Elestrals, and that's going to be tough for Steve to come back from. He's going to need to pull off some sort of a combo play here to get back into this game. Now, there's no back row, right? Drewby has no back row, so there's an opportunity here. He's got 2 fire spirits he's throwing down. He's going to play a mid-game eruption here. Okay, so I tend to prefer to hold those eruptions until the very later stage of the game, because you have an opportunity to kind of catch your opponent off guard, and you might be able to surprise them. In this case, Steve kind of doing the best he can right now to, you know, get any sort of an advantage, and he's going to be able to hit for 3 on Drewby. He's going to cast his Sluggle to grab 3 spirits himself. Looks like he's got 2, so kind of suboptimal Sluggle play, right? We've seen 2 Sluggles hit the field from Steve, but not able to take advantage of what Sluggle can really do, which is actually return 3 spirits back, not just 2. So I think we've seen 2 instances of where, you know, we see Sluggle kind of miss a little bit in terms of the regeneration. And the way you can avoid that in Elestrals is by utilizing runes that can take on any spirits, right? So your Nectar of the Gods, that's a really great example. Something like a Shield of Achilles. Understandably, not every caster has access to all of these tools at this stage of Elestrals right now, but still worth mentioning there. Drewby's going to actually enchant the Aeromare with a Thunder Spirit, which I find to be quite interesting. I'm not sure what the game plan is there. He may be setting up for an Ascension into Sonicore later on in the game. We know that he has that Sonicore, and he's looking to try to utilize it at some point in this match, and that would most certainly seal the deal. Veritaqua is going to clean up the Sluggle there, and we're going to see kind of an offensive barrage from Drewby as P-Gust will hit. Looks like Hydrake's going to hit, and then Aeromare is also going to hit here. Let's do a quick listen in.
And then 2 with Aeromare.
It's not misenchanted.
Oh, what is it? What's the proper term for, like, the wrong spirit on it? Like, he's a win with the thunder on it. It's just enchanted?
It's the wrong spirit. Yeah, it's enchanted because it still has like it still does have 1 with spirit, so it's properly enchanted.
Yeah, if it was just thunder, it'd be considered misenchanted.
Got you. Okay, my fault. Oh, there's no main phase 2.
We thought it'd be fun for you guys to listen a bit about misenchanting, which is a really unique strategy in Elestrals, and I think in this context, you have an opportunity to do that, especially when you're facing off against water. You can misenchant your Elestrals with water to essentially dodge things like Tsunami, or in this case, you could essentially dodge a Rhyceros kind of summoning sickness type effect. You could get around things like Eruption by misenchanting an Elestral with fire. Steve has another Sluggle, and somehow he's hanging in this game with that. That's been very interesting. But another thing to mention about the misenchanting is you can do things like Drewby might be doing right now, which is setting up his Aeromare to ascend into a Sonicore later on. So you kind of set up those spirits in earlier turns. Aramera is definitely one of the Elestrals that most often will be misenchanted. So that's a, not a crazy play there. And we actually see these. Did I get this right? I did, but it's not the Sonic Core. Rather, it's the Lycavolt. Lycavolt is a very interesting Elestral that doesn't see a lot of play, but when it hits, it can hit hard, and it can start to pick off cards from the hand. We're going to see that Lycavolt. It looks like it does hit. 3 spirits on it. I'm not sure what the back row is here, as Steve has no sort of a response, and these Elestrals are just barraging into Steve's spirit deck. Steve is taking a lot of hits right now. Let's do another listen in and see how Steve is holding up.
And then does Aramare come out? Like, when does Aramare become equipped to Lycavolt? Is it like right? Is it only?
It's immediately.
It is immediately. Okay. So it goes right to the discard and then it comes out, or you just go right to the.
No, yeah, it goes to discard and then you activate it in graveyard and it goes back to the enemy.
Okay. So is it equipped right now, or did I mess it up?
No, it's what's the how serious is this tournament? I don't think it's
pretty much I didn't say I was doing that, and I already put it here, so I'm just gonna say it's gone. That's my own fault. I gotta be more aware of that in the future.
I don't know if this tournament is meant to be like a matter of life and death. It's essentially a showcase.
Wait, so you're saying if I decide it's a matter of life and death, you can't do it?
Essentially, yes.
If you win this game, Drew, I will die.
I'm gonna leave it in the grave because I did not.
No, you can do it, man. That's fine. That's fine. You can do it. That's fine. You can do it. You gotta learn. It's fine. I'm not worried about it.
I'm gonna learn the hard way. So Hydroid went through.
All right, so that was a pretty insightful listen in there, right? And I do want to kind of touch base on that. So with the card like Aramare, its effect is activated when it's ascended. So Drewby would have needed to activate it kind of immediately after the ascension there, and you'll see here that he's actually going to enchant it again. So the Aramare and the spirit under it would essentially go to the underworld, or at least the Aramare would because you're ascending, and then you would need to re-enchant the Aramare with wind in your rune zone to activate its artifact effect, where it essentially becomes an artifact, and it's going to empower the Lycavolt in this context. So Steve takes some big hits here. We end up kind of going back, allowing Drewby to have that Aramare as the judge, and Steve and Drewby all determine, hey, you know what, we're all learning here. This will be fun. Let's make sure we kind of stop and learn. And that's why we do these listen-ins too, right? Not just to show, fun banter or hardcore strategic gameplay or any of that, but to give you guys insight into the game and give you guys a little bit more perspective on kind of how these casters are learning and how they're planning and how they're building upon strategy and diving into the world of Elestriad, which has been really fun to watch. So I hope you guys will enjoy as we continue to press onward here with these different matches, as not only these casters learn more and enhance their strategies, but they're going to be showcasing that kind of live throughout these games, which I think will be really fun. Steve does have another eruption here. He's going to be able to kind of hit directly for 3. That's going to give him an opportunity to slowly chip Drewby down, but with Drewby's field, it's looking pretty tough if you're Steve right now. If you're Magnitude, you're definitely a little nervous because you don't have a whole lot going on. He has a tornado, so he can bounce back the Aramare into the hand. He's down to just 5 spirits, it seems, whereas Drewby is down to 6. So the Aramare ends up going to the underworld here. I believe he does bounce it though to remove the protection that the Lycavolt had. Steve is in a very difficult position right now. I think if you're Steve, the way you needed this game to work, he has his Galaxy actually. Galaxy will give him a little bit of a shot here. He's going to swap the attack and defense of all water Elestrals on the field, give him a chance to kind of deal some damage. But I think if you're Steve, you really needed to get rid of that Hydreigon early and try to force Drewby to use those spirits quickly and then fire off those eruptions in the late game. I think the strategy was there. It was a little tough to execute. Let's listen in for the final moments of the game.
Islands of Aeolia.
Oh, yeah.
So now Hydreig's a 5/2, Pegasus is a 3/4, and then Lycavolt is affected as well because he has a Wind Spirit on him, so he's 7/4.
Which I think means you win. Yep, you win.
I would say, yeah, I'd hit Hydreig for the crash, get the effect, and then...
You don't even need to. God, camera is the perfect time. It's like a Godzilla movie. It's just terrible. Yep, 4, and... Yep, that's it. You win. You hit me for at least... You hit me for 5 with that after that, so that's it. Dude, I drew 3 runes all game. Or 4 runes all game. That was it.
And that's going to be that. It looks like Drewby is going to take week 1 of the Elestriad with a commanding defeat representing Wind, ALS, and his Pantheon, just destroying Poseidon and the Water Pantheon. Like I said, I think a couple things could have went a little differently there for both casters, but Steve very frustrated at the end that he was not able to draw the runes that he needed. Instead, ended up cluttering his hand with eruptions. The key play for me in this match was actually that Atlantis going down early on with the P-Gus. We ended up seeing an Island of Aeolia hit the field later on in the match, but getting rid of that Atlantis early allowed him to be able to attack over some of those Elestrals. And I think if you're Steve too, that Sluggle usage was a little rough. I think there was a few instances there where he could have maybe used the expend to draw feature. Expend a Spirit, don't cast an Elestral, draw something, and try to get something that can put on some pressure, as those Sluggles and that Aphros just wasn't able to put on any pressure. I think you could also look at that pivotal turn with the Foamy. Instead of grabbing Aphros, grabbing something a little bit more offensively based, could have put him in a position where he could have at least kept the control that Drewby had off of his back a little bit more and maybe taken some more of an advantage in this game. But ultimately, we're going to be headed to week 2. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Like and subscribe if you guys are new. And don't forget to head over to shopelestrals.com and pick up some of our starter decks or playmats or sleeves or even a sweet shirt. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys soon.